Every single baby is a genius. Seriously. Without anyone teaching them, they manage to crack a code that's more complex than any computer program ever written. So today, we're going to dive into how they pull it off.
I mean, just stop and think about that for a second. It is an insane computational feat. And for decades, scientists have been battling over how our brains actually do it. We're going to jump right into that fight, because the answer, well, it doesn't just tell us about ourselves. It's the key to understanding the AI that's reshaping our entire world.
All right, so for the longest time, the leading theory was pretty elegant, pretty simple. Our brains come with language software already installed right from the factory. This is what's often called the classical view, or nativism. It argues that the deep, universal rules of grammar, the real foundations, aren't things you learn from scratch. Nope, they're hardwired into our biology. So a baby learning English or Japanese isn't starting with a blank slate. They're more like they're just figuring out which switches to flip on a system that's already built and ready to go. Okay, so this table really lays out the fundamental conflict. On one side, you have that rulebook brain we're talking about. It sees knowledge as a set of explicit instructions processed step by step, kind of like a traditional computer. But a radical new idea was about to come along and turn this whole thing completely on its head. So this challenger theory comes in and argues the brain isn't a rulebook at all. Instead, it's this powerful, super flexible detective that's built to find clues and statistical patterns in the chaos of language it hears every single day. And this idea is called connectionism. So instead of thinking about a central processor running a program, just imagine a massive, sprawling web. Every time you hear a word or a sound, certain pathways in this web just light up. Knowledge isn't a rule written down somewhere. It's the strength of the connections in that web. That's the whole key. So how does this web learn? Well, through something called statistical learning. The pattern detective brain is an unconscious master statistician. From the moment you're born, it's not just listening, it's counting. It's tracking probabilities, calculating which syllable is likely to follow another, which words tend to hang out together. It's just a relentless data cruncher. So here's the crucial point. In this connectionist view, language isn't pre-programmed. It emerges from all the statistical patterns a child hears. A rule like add an S to make something plural isn't innate. It's just a super strong pathway that gets forged after hearing dogs, cats, and toys thousands and thousands of times. Okay, so we've got two really powerful theories. How do you test them? Well, the battleground became a simple, everyday part of English grammar that every single child has to master. Forming the past tense. The rulebook model has a really neat, tidy explanation for this. For regular verbs, you've got a rule. Just add ed. For the weird ones, like go and break, you just memorize them. Two separate systems. One for rules, one for rote memory. Simple enough, right? But then we have this. A common mistake that almost every English-speaking kid makes. And this little error? It's a massive clue. Because think about it. If the child had just memorized the word broke, why would they ever say braked? This is a real puzzle for that two-system rule-based theory. And this is where the connectionist idea just shines. See, the pattern detective brain isn't making a mistake at all. It is correctly identified that adding ed is the most dominant, most reliable pattern in the language. The pathway for that pattern is just so strong that it temporarily overrides the weaker, less frequent pattern for the word break. Braked isn't an error. It's the logical output of the system working perfectly. This was a huge breakthrough. Connectionist models showed that a single, unified network, just by adjusting its connection strengths based on how often it hears things, could learn to handle both regular and irregular verbs. What looked like two different mental processes was really just an illusion created by the statistics of the language itself. So, why does this whole debate about toddler grammar matter so much today? Because this idea, the brain as a pattern detective, it didn't just stay in the cognitive science lab. It escaped, and it went on to build the world we're all living in right now. See, the revival of these neural network ideas back in the 1980s, the very same ones they used to model the past tense, created the direct ancestors of modern AI. You had breakthroughs like backpropagation, which is basically a way for the network to learn from its mistakes, and that allowed them to learn far more complex patterns. These are the very same foundations that today's large language models are built on.
So, here's the big takeaway. That AI writing your emails, at its core, it's a pattern detective on an industrial scale. It wasn't fed a grammar book. It was fed a massive chunk of the internet and was just told, find the patterns. In a very real sense, the AI in your pocket learned language in a way that's, well, it's pretty darn similar to how you did.
But the story isn't over, not by a long shot. As powerful as this idea is, it hasn't answered every single question. The debate isn't fully settled, and some very big challenges are still out there.
And here's the main sticking point: generativity. Humans don't just repeat patterns. You can create and understand a sentence that has almost certainly never been said before in human history. Like, the purple elephant is meditating on the ethics of space cheese. You can embed ideas inside of other ideas. And critics argue that just being a really good pattern matcher, well, that's not enough to explain this boundless abstract creativity.
And that's really the million-dollar question. Does our ability for abstract rule-like thoughts somehow just emerge from this massive pattern-matching network? Or is there still a ghost of that rule-book machine lurking in our brains, working alongside the pattern detective? It's a fascinating question, and it gets to the very source of what makes us human.